Welcome to UIA Podcast, where our members and member firms address important legal issues of the day. We hope you will enjoy today's edition. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first UIA podcast. We are delighted to have the current president, Jorge Martí of UIA Menendez Abogados, joining us, along with the former president, Jerry Roth, of Munger, Tolles and Olson in California. As many of you will know, Jorge, the president, is a specialist in banking, corporate M&A and arbitration law. Jerry is a specialist in civil and criminal litigation, especially with an international aspect. And here on this first podcast, we are going to be introducing the UIA. If you've ever wondered who they are, why they exist, what they're all about, and most importantly, why you should become a member, then this is the podcast for you. And we very much hope that you will enjoy this 45 to 50 minute podcast with us today. Right, so let's kick off from the beginning. What were the origins of the UIA? Can you just tell us a little bit about the historical background and the reasons why it was created?
Yes, with pleasure. I think it's important to think about the historical background. At the end of the 19th century, most lawyers work within autonomous and independent bar associations. Each had their own customs. But after World War I, European lawyers gradually realized the importance of helping bar associations to modernize and build international relationships. Lawyers themselves started to require to serve the interest of their clients to rely on foreign practitioners. And in July 1925, lawyers from Belgium, France, Luxembourg, they initiated talks about the creation of the Union Internationale des Avocats. And after 2 years, on the 8th of July of 1927, in Charleroi, in Belgium, this was done. The association was born. The first president was a Frenchman, Jorge, who was at the time president of the Paris Bar Association. And once the UIA was formed, several bar associations sought membership. They joined. And they realized that the dual objectives of the UIA were very helpful, adapting all the bars to the new economic and international climate, and also working with the League of Nations to establish lasting peace in the world. In 1930, the UIA adopted the motto Omnia Fraterne. We are all brothers. And in 1933, in Dubrovnik, an influential Belgian lawyer concluded his words saying, "Unity is called for everywhere. We must unite or perish." So this is just to give some illustration on what were the origins. But the UIA has developed, and what initially was a project led by bar association continued with bar associations, but included individual members, lawyers, practicing lawyers, and also associate members.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in there, Rachel, this is Jerry. Jorge has correctly lined out the history of UIA. I always joke with folks that it was really born out of the same sense of internationalism and globalism as the League of Nations. But happily, UIA has done much better than the League of Nations, which didn't last through the decade. And it has survived now almost 100 years. We'll be coming up on our centennial in a few years. And it really has given a voice to this notion that the lawyers of the world should be united. Jorge mentioned fraternity. Certainly now it's a fraternity and sorority all in one, because so many of our most important members are women. And it has just been a very successful effort over 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating history, I have to say, and amazing to hear it so well sort of studied out in bullet points. I'm sure it's something that people could spend days or weeks reading into if they wanted to. But I suppose I'd be really interested to know for both of you, what is the mission now? What were the initial objectives? And are they still valid today? Have they changed? What's the situation with that?
Well, if I can jump on that, the missions really are threefold at this point. One of them is to provide a means for lawyers to exchange information, to learn from one another through seminars, congresses, publications, all of the various ways that lawyers can learn from one another. A second is really networking, friendship, relationships with our fellow lawyers. And the third is protecting lawyers around the world, protecting not only human rights, but the lawyers who defend human rights advocates, what we call défense de la défense, or defense of the defense, defending lawyers around the world as well. Those are our three missions. I would say that the original mission, as Jorge lined it out, of maintaining peace in the world is still there. But the way we give voice to that interest in peace and internationalism is through those missions that I've mentioned.
Yeah, I really love that. It's amazing to kind of think of it's sort of almost the different layers and really enabling lawyers to feel as though they can have a place where they can come and learn, where they can be supported, but also where they can then reach out to support others, creates this amazing pyramid of mission. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Jorge.
Yes, I think that it's worth mentioning that in addition to the UIA commitment to defend the cause of lawyers that are being prosecuted or threatened just because of exercising their profession, the UIA has created UIA IDOL, the Institute of the Rule of Law, which is meant to promote the rule of law and address essential human rights issues. Like that, we close the circle. In addition to what Jerry has mentioned, human rights also play an important role within UIA.
Amazing. And so how is it governed? What are the main governing bodies? Do you have elections or how does it work?
Yes, of course. We are a democratic association.
Delighted to hear it.
And the main governing bodies, we have as all associations the General Assembly with all the members that they ratify all decisions, key decisions. Then we have the Conseil de Présidence, Consejo de Presidencia, the governing board that I think has around 200 people. There we have the members of the executive committee that I would refer to, that they are about 30 people. Then on the top of that, we have the presidents of the 43 commissions or working groups: environmental law, corporate law, arbitration, banking law, criminal law. But then we add the presidents of the national chapters or national committees, the Italian lawyers, the French, US lawyers, Spanish lawyers. They do have a president that has a responsibility from a territorial perspective. And they all amount to almost 200 because each president appoints between 15 and 25 personal counselors of the president that they have agreed to carry out a particular mission to develop UIA in India, to organize a webinar about new technologies and how it will affect law firms. So, for example, I have appointed 3 under 30 because one of the objectives in my presidency was to make young lawyers in the association to participate in our governing bodies. So, in addition to this governing body, we have the executive committee that has like 30 people, going from the director of International Relations to the Director of Finances, the Director of Congresses, of seminars, of publications. And then every week we meet Jerry and the Vice President and the President-elect, together with the current President and the leaving President, together with the General Manager of the Association and the Financial Director and the Secretary General, to discuss, the day-to-day issues that need to be resolved. And this is the way we work.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Rachel, we have so many different countries represented, of course, and so there are many different approaches and many different opinions about what we should be doing. But one of the great things I have found about the UIA is that despite the fact that we hotly debate issues and that we've had some hotly contested elections over the course of the years that I've been a member, we try to really maintain, and I think successfully do maintain, a sense of common purpose and civility. Certainly in recent years, watching the political world, I wish that some of that would leak out to some of the political situations we've seen. But we maintain a spirit of unity and friendship throughout these hotly debated issues that I think is really admirable and that I think we work hard to maintain.
Well, I mean, it's not every day that you get to do a podcast with a past president and a current president. I'm not going to lie. It's, pretty hot people in the hot seats. But I wondered if you could tell us, in terms of being president now, Jorge, having formerly been President Jerry, what has been the big attraction of that? What has been the greatest honour of that for you both?
Jerry, you take the lead.
Oh, well, being the president last year, which was obviously a difficult year with COVID, was the greatest professional honor of my life. To get to hear from people around the world, to see their viewpoints, to try to maintain the spirit of friendship and unity that I just talked about, to try to develop programs where we can learn from one another, and to oversee this big sprawling mechanism that is spread out across the globe, working with our center in Paris, but lawyers around the world, really is a wonderful opportunity to learn and to lead. And I think it's an important aspect of UIA. I think the entire UIA tries to provide a leadership of the lawyers of the world, a method of thinking about what it means to be a lawyer. And being president of the organization gives you the opportunity to really focus on that in a way that I haven't found in any of my other professional endeavors.
Amazing.
So with that, I'll turn it over. I feel a bit like Trump turning it over to Biden here, but President Biden, what do you think?
I fully agree that it is an honor. It is also a major responsibility to represent lawyers worldwide before governments, before institutions, before United Nations. And also, it is a great personal satisfaction. Although this last element for Jerry and for me has not been as glamorous as it used to be, because there is no traveling. My crowning as president of UIA took place instead of in Guadalajara, Mexico, with mariachis playing Mexican music. It was done through a Zoom call. But we are not going to complain. We are here to serve the association. We will not complain because there are people who have very serious suffering, but we cannot deny that there is not a lot of glamour in what we're doing.
This is about as glamorous as it gets.
It's certainly a very different world at the moment.
Yes.
There's no denying that. But talking about, so moving on then to the, worldwide, and we've mentioned the history, the connection with the League of Nations. We've mentioned the defending of the defenders. How active is the UIA in connection with human rights? What is there any things that the association have done that you'd like to emphasize?
Yeah, Rachel, thank you for asking about that. As Jorge mentioned, this is a key component of UIA. Around the world, over the past decade, for example, we've seen a bit of a drift towards autocracy in various countries around the world. And even in countries that are not autocratic, one of the things politicians like to do is when they go after the opposition, they often go after their lawyers. Lawyers, by definition, are challenging to governments, to regimes, to the status quo. And as a result, they often find themselves targeted by governments. And they often find themselves targeted by governments and officials and executive and legislatures, and sometimes even by the judiciary, although normally we work side by side with the judiciary. They find themselves targeted for doing nothing more than being lawyers, for representing their clients, for taking positions, for being advocates, for advocating. And when that happens, when lawyers find themselves targeted, UIA steps in. And we have done this around the world. We have done this by reaching out to lawyers who have been targeted, by reaching out to governments to make sure they know they're being watched, they're being seen, that their activities are not simply happening in darkness, but actually to try to shine a light on some of the unfair things they have done to lawyers. And this ranges from overt oppression of lawyers. It can mean putting them in jail, sometimes worse. And we have been very involved with lawyers who have been sometimes put in jail, tried, accused of crimes for simply being lawyers. We've seen that in many countries around the world, but also in more subtle ways. Efforts to put restrictions on their practice, or efforts to how you become a lawyer, or restrictions on ways in which lawyers can appear in court, or what they can say, what they can do. And there too, we try to step in and protect lawyers' ability to do what they are supposed to do, which is to advocate, and to advocate for communities that are sometimes not well represented, not always heard from, sometimes in opposition to the government. Make sure that those lawyers have the opportunity to do what we're really supposed to do. And same with judges. We have worked very, very hard to protect the independence not only of bar associations and lawyers, but also of judges who sometimes are similarly attacked, repressed, and sometimes subject to subtle discipline and other means that governments use when they don't like the opinions that the courts come out with. Courts and lawyers are a critical component of the rule of law. You cannot have the rule of law without lawyers. You cannot have it without an independent judiciary. And we have taken this to heart and worked really, really hard to make sure that lawyers who are being subject to restrictions and or oppression have a voice and know that they have a brother sisterhood around the world looking out for their interests and rights.
Yes, and maybe on the top of that, I would like to mention that UIA is now also very interested on business and human rights. We have created a commission on business and human rights. Also, there is a commission on international criminal defense. We are very focused also on the independence of the profession. Subjects like the legal privilege have been studied, and a resolution has been passed. So, in general, human rights and protection of lawyers, rule of law, but also independence of the profession and the business aspects of human rights are taking nowadays a paramount importance.
And you mentioned there that you'd done some research. Is that research done by your network that you then put together and publish? Is that right? Or
we have collective members, basically bar associations, federations of lawyers, and they meet every year at our Congress on what we call the Senate of Bar Leaders. And within the Senate, in the Luxembourg Congress, they debated about the legal privilege because the legal privilege is not well understood in the current times, where transparency in social networks, in the press, appears to be an absolute value. people do not realize that legal privilege is essential. First, it is a privilege not of the lawyer, it's a privilege of the client. And it has to be associated with the protection of personal data. Imagine that a doctor hears about a patient's health problems. He has to keep it secret because that is a guarantee for the patient to speak openly to his doctor. And obviously the doctor cannot disclose that neither to the employer of that patient, to the relatives, or to the press. So transparency is not necessarily an absolute value. There are certain instances in life where secret is very, very important. And one of them is that in order to have access to the best professional defense, the person consulting a lawyer must be completely sure that what he's saying is protected. And in most of our countries, it is not only a breach of our professional ethics, it can be, an offense in the criminal codes. And yes, Jerry.
I just wanted to mention, Jorge, it's so interesting because I worked on this booklet that we put out about professional privilege, or what we call attorney-client privilege in the United States. It was so interesting because for my European colleagues, this was considered to be a human right. The privilege is a human right and arises from the client's human rights. In the United States, it's not considered a human right. In the United States, it's considered an evidentiary doctrine. And yet, we found points of agreement. The points of agreement was that it is essential to the protection of clients, to their data, as Jorge was just saying, to their right to be able to consult with a lawyer, to their right to defense, which are all essential components of the rule of law and of a democratic society. And so this was a perfect example of where I learned so much about a different perspective on an issue I knew very well, and where we had to find common ground, and where we were able to do so and able to put out a statement of a universal approach to attorney-client or legal privilege, even though they end up getting discussed or described or named in very, very different ways across different systems. So I cite to this all the time as a wonderful learning experience for myself.
Well, I think that's one of the things I was thinking was quite interesting, that obviously you've got this huge, expansive network, which we've talked about, which has been described, and where you have an issue like that you can draw from that wealth of experience and produce something like a booklet, which then becomes this incredible resource to any lawyers who, happen to come across a cross-jurisdictional problem in their own work or professional life, which they can then draw on. And that's, for anyone, any lawyer working internationally, it's an incredible resource or network to have access to. I can see how that would be amazing, really. But so moving on from that, really, I suppose directly correlated is who can be a member of the UIA? Can I be a member of the UIA?
Yes, because you are very witty, intelligent, elegant, and a practicing lawyer. So that is the first requirement, to be a practicing lawyer, to be a member of UIA, and then you fill your application that you can find in our webpage, and then your application is submitted to our executive board, and normally, if you are registered in your bar association, if it is compulsory in your country to be a member of a bar association, you will be admitted. The president of the national committee of the jurisdiction where the applicant is based would be consulted normally. And but you do not need godparents or whatever to be admitted. You can apply individually. That is regarding individual members. As I said, we do have also collective members that are bars, lawyers associations, and federations. And then we have associate individual members who are other legal professionals, such as law professors or magistrates, as Jerry was saying. Justice is very important for us, and we have to work together. And then we can have associate collective members who are association not of lawyers, but other legal professions. And finally, we have honorary members for those that have helped the UIA to grow, and it is conferred by the General Assembly of the UIA as a distinction.
And Rachel, if I can add one point there, we also welcome with open arms in-house lawyers at companies. You know, that the status of in-house lawyers really, this is another example where the status varies around the world. Different countries treat it differently. Some treat in-house lawyers as members of the bar, some do not. But regardless of that, we welcome in-house lawyers as members of the UIA, and we've actually been having a number of panels and discussions with our in-house members as well recently.
Amazing.
Yes, I think in-house lawyers are essential for us to know what the client expects from us. And if you want, we could expand on what are the advantages of being a member of the UIA in case someone who is not yet a member is interested in joining us.
Definitely. And what are the advantages?
Well, the advantages, I think we have mentioned them while we were talking, the networking, helping lawyers to grow their business, a source of contacts globally, but also the exchange of personal experiences, information, expertise through the meetings of our commissions and working groups. We contribute to legal education. We produce the certificates that are required for that purpose. We organize training courses. And then recently, under Jerry's mandate, we created a mentoring program, which is the best way to contribute to the personal development of young lawyers. Young lawyers have a lot to tell us. They can help us with social networks. They can help us with many different things. But more experienced lawyers, they have a lot to tell. And I think in the UIA, we have some great hair. It's not my case because I have very little hair. But many things to tell young lawyers. Jerry, for example, has been the mentor of my son-in-law, and he has been delighted in how Jerry has helped him to cope with the doubts, with the decisions that we are facing in our profession, and how important it is to be well guided at an early stage in your career as a lawyer. So thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you. Your son-in-law is it's been wonderful mentee, and it's been as enriching for me as I hope it is for him. But you know, we have webinars, we have seminars, we deal with a whole bunch of legal topics, and you can learn so much because it's hard enough to stay on top of the developments in your own country, but trying to stay on top of legal developments around the world is even more difficult. And we really try to provide service in that way too. And that, I think, is the biggest advantage. And it's so critical for a lawyer nowadays to be at least aware of legal developments outside of her own country or his own country. What does it mean to be an employee in France? What are employment laws in France? What are tax laws in Argentina? What are travel restrictions, immigration issues? What is corporate governance if you have a subsidiary in China or in Russia? What do you have to be on top of? And we try to provide training on all of those issues. But as Jorge said, there's also a lot of personal issues for lawyers. It's hard to be a lawyer. You've got to make decisions all throughout your career. You've got to figure out what the next step is. You've got to deal with doubts about whether you're taking the right path, whether you're doing the right thing. And we try to, through these mentoring programs, through our special committees for our women members, or through our national committees, we try to give people the chance to talk about these problems and questions that they have, because it's so helpful to learn you're not alone, that there are others having these same doubts. And also, as a mentor, I take such great pleasure in when I do realize something, passing it on to a younger lawyer so that hopefully makes their path a little bit easier. The biggest piece of advice I gave to Jorge's son-in-law, who was trying to keep all his options open, is that as young lawyers, we all try to keep our options open. And that's a phrase we all use. But the truth is, at some point, you've got to close an option or you will never get anywhere. Sometimes the hardest thing is not keeping options open, but closing off options and being comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And having that discussion with him was so useful both to him and to me, I think, because it was putting to words something we all go through. And I think that's really the core of the UIA.
I think it's an amazing thing. I mean, it's certainly, you know, as a youngish lawyer, it is really difficult sometimes to know if you're doing it right, if you are making good decisions, if you can trust yourself, and then all the practical things, you know, managing your own life, your work-life balance, everything else. And I think, you know, particularly now, particularly in these COVID times when everyone is working so remotely, you don't have that, whether you're working in a law firm and you usually have that camaraderie of the office around you, people you can talk to, or chambers, or whatever it is you have in your own country, that actually having an organisation through which you have a mentor or you have a mentee, someone you can say like, oh gosh, this thing came up today and actually I didn't have a clue how to deal with it and I did this, and was that the right decision or should I have done something else? You know, I imagine for lots of young lawyers, I mean, I can't be alone, I'm sure, in thinking that what a fantastic opportunity to have someone to talk to about that. I'm sure it's something that would engage and interest lots and lots of people. So thank you for telling us about that. I wanted to move on now to just ask about how it's funded. I mean, not to go into the nitty-gritty detail, but an organisation like this must be funded in some way. And I wondered if you wanted to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, I can jump in on that. We have basically four sources of funding. One is our membership fees, which are relatively modest for an organization of our sort and which are critical to our development. And I think we really gear towards, are we providing the service for those fees that our membership pays? I think we do. But that's our guiding star, so to speak, is the membership fee being compensated to the member in terms of what we're able to provide him or her. Secondly, we have these seminars and webinars that I talked about, some of which have been free in COVID, but many of which now are paying seminars, relatively minor fees. When we have live seminars, those are charged seminars as well, again, relatively modest fees. And that's a second source of income. One of our biggest sources of income, number three, is our annual Congress, which we have each year, where folks come for 3 or 4 days of meetings, seminars in person, and social events. And we always have some wonderful ceremonies where we often have important figures, sometimes political figures, sometimes legal figures, speak to us. That is a critical source of our funding. And then, of course, we have sponsors, and we could not operate without our critical sponsors. You know, companies around the world involved in the legal area, or actually just who have products or services that lawyers might be interested in, sponsor our various events, sponsor our organization. One I want to mention because it's so critical to us is LexisNexis, just a wonderful legal organization around the world that we have a very close relationship with and that we've worked with quite closely for years now. But also other companies around the world, and not just companies, universities have sponsored us. A number of organizations have sponsored our activities over the years. So those are our main four sources. And we are, other than that, entirely self-funded. And we keep an eye on, again, our critical question, what Jorge spends nights thinking about, what I used to spend nights thinking about, sometimes still do, is are we giving members what sort of service for the fees that they paid. And I have to say, I think we are.
We are giving members our magazine every 2 months, the Jurist. We have newsletters, we have the capsules, we have coffee chats to keep in touch with our members and the president. And this year we have initiated the coffee chat with the vice president, for example, with the director of the Institute of the Rule of Law, with the president-elect, just to give a little bit more flavor from different sources. But as Jerry said, we are a self-funded organization, modest financially, but constant. We are almost 100 years old. And we fortunately had some reserves, not enormous, that allowed us to keep alive last year and providing our webinars for free to our members. We had a virtual congress last year that also helped us to give some content to the membership. But I think the greatest content of the membership is the advantage that it represents, not only to have access to information, but to have access to foreign colleagues that can help you to better serve your client. Referrals. That is, sometimes you receive them and sometimes you ask a colleague to help you out.
And Rachel, I have to emphasize that what Jorge just said. I am known in California that if you need a lawyer somewhere in the world, come to me because I will have a really good referral for you. And I sometimes feel like I should open up a referral service because I have referred my fellow UIA members to so many people in the United States who suddenly wake up and say, "Oh my, it just happened. I was dealing with someone who had a legal issue in France, and then another who said, I need somebody in Cape Town, South Africa, immediately for a litigation. Do you know somebody?" Well, we just had a webinar 2 years ago in Cape Town, and we met a seminar, I should say, and we met some wonderful lawyers and got to really work closely with them. And I was able to refer this lawyer to this person in the United States who was so grateful and said, otherwise it would have just been out of a book. It would have been on the web, as opposed to hearing that you've met this person, you've worked with this person, and you know her or him to be a stand-up lawyer. So it's incredibly valuable to everybody who participates.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to add that, one of the things that we're going to be doing with these podcasts we go through is talking to people doing the webinars and seminars and giving people a flavour of what's on offer. It won't be the full shebang and you'll have to go and log in and purchase the full webinars if you want to do that, but really just to give people a flavour. So if you're interested, if you want to find out more, if you want to kind of dip in and out, these podcasts are a way for you to do that this year, and we really hope that they will be useful. And if people do have any feedback or anything they want to feed back to us, then of course we would be delighted to receive that from anyone. So I want to move on, thinking about the international, thinking about what you've just said, Jerry, about the network, how you can meet people. What about language? How do you work? How do you manage to combine multilingualism with efficiency within the organization?
We have 3 official languages, if you allow me to take the lead on this one. The official languages are English, French, and Spanish, the working languages. But we have some other official languages. Sometimes we have to sacrifice some of these just for the benefit of efficiency, or where the cost of simultaneous translation in 3 languages make it, too burdensome. But we try to keep this multilingualism, which is very, very much in the DNA of our association. And we like Jerry speaks fluent Spanish and French, and I'm also fluent in French and obviously in Spanish. And we like to have this atmosphere where you switch from one language to the other depending on who is around and how the language skills are. And this is beautiful, I must say.
Yeah, unlike some other organizations which have gone all English, and that can be tempting. We really feel like the use of different languages is respectful of our members and sort of differentiates us. And whatever we lose in efficiency from time to time, we gain in fuller participation from members around the world. And Jorge and I are all, as he mentioned, are very used to sort of switching among languages and saying things sort of one sentence in one language, another in a different language. We sometimes use written materials in English, and we'll speak in French or Spanish. And our seminars typically have a one language that we choose, but often materials are written in the other languages for members. I think we've done a wonderful job of maintaining our multiculturalism and our multilingualism without inefficiency and without giving in to that temptation of just using one language all the time to the exclusion of the other languages of our members.
Amazing. And I know that we're going to try and incorporate that multilingualism into the podcast as well. So if you're listening out for that or looking out for that, then please do. I wanted to move on, sort of final two questions really, to think about the congresses. We've mentioned them in passing a few times during the podcast. And I just wanted to sort of think generally, I know you mentioned the last one was by Zoom because of COVID-19, but in general, are they open to all members? Where do they take place? Do they move around year to year? Is it like a sort of scout jamboree or something else?
So our congresses are our highlight and something we do best, I think. We do move around. They're often in cities around the world. We've had them in South America, North America, Europe. We're going to be having one in Africa next year. We've already had one in North Africa, as well as in Asia recently. We invite both members and non-members, and we have 3.5 or 4 days of full activities with a number of seminars, as I mentioned, ceremonies and social events. People love coming to our congresses. Many of us, including myself, organize my yearly vacation around our Congress. So through that, I've been to places I might not otherwise have been. One of my favorites, for example, was in Santiago in Brazil, in Porto recently, in Portugal, in Valencia, Jorge's hometown, which was just a wonderful Congress. We were going to be in Guadalajara last year, but of course we ended up having to go virtual. But that would have been absolutely wonderful as well. And we always, just to add one more point, people usually add a few days before or after to our congresses to get to know the country and the area. And we always have an organized tour on the last day. Usually if the Congress runs, for example, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we have a Sunday tour where people just get together and tour the area together in a more social atmosphere, taking advantage of the friendships they've made over the course of the Congress. So yes, open to everyone. We really try to welcome our non-members along with our members and make sure that we have many different ways to make sure people interact with each other and have a wonderful time.
Amazing.
I may just add that the dates normally are 3 or 4 days in the last days of October. Normally to take into account that in many countries, the 1st of November is a public holiday. So like that, the working days that you are going to miss from the office are somehow reduced. We were very much looking forward to going to Guadalajara, Mexico, and to celebrate El Día de los Muertos on the 2nd of November, which is a big celebration in Mexico, but it has not been possible so far.
What about the next one? Where's it? Are we hoping for
Good question. We've been thinking a lot about it, and it was planned that this November in 2021 we were going to meet in Guadalajara, but in the light of the world situation regarding COVID, we had to change, and we've been thinking very carefully about different options, not having a Congress at all, going back to a virtual Congress. But finally, we realized that 60% of our attendants were from Europe. So we decided to organize an annual Congress open to everybody, but in a European country. And within Europe, Southern Europe normally, because of weather conditions, I presume, attracts a lot of people. So finally, we are going to try to celebrate our Congress this year in Madrid. And it's not much time left. We normally plan these things 2 or 3 years ahead. So it's a lot of work to be done. But Madrid also is a destination that has been characterized because local authorities have taken an approach of mastering and adjusting to the circumstances, the restrictions. So they try to open as much as possible. If the figures go badly, then in a responsible way, they pose restrictions, but they lift them immediately. And not all local authorities within Spain or internationally have reacted the same way. So this has been taken into account by us, and we are very much looking forward to it. And as a Mexican colleague once said, el Congreso de la UIA es color y es calor. El color lo dan los diferentes temas que se discuten en las comisiones y en los grupos de trabajo, y el calor lo dan las personas, que empiezan siendo profesionales conocidos y acaban siendo amigos. Peut-être, Jerry, tu pourrais ajouter quelque chose en français?
Oui, avec plaisir. Nous reconnaissons que cette année a été un peu difficile, plein de défis comme l'année dernière. Mais nous sommes ravis de pouvoir organiser ce congrès à Madrid cette année et nous espérons que nous verrons beaucoup de nos amis français, francophones et beaucoup de nos amis anglophones, américains, etc.
Oui, nos amis africains qui viennent toujours très contents en Espagne parce qu'ils sont très attachés à l'Espagne, à notre culture. Alors, on attend tous nos amis latino-américains, nord-américains, canadiens, et aussi ceux d'Asie qui peuvent venir, nous serons ravis. Et nos collègues mexicains, ils ont donné leur support à cette idée et on va tous travailler ensemble pour que ça soit une réussite, si est-ce qu'on peut le faire.
Sí, exactamente.
Wow.
Bien dicho, mi amigo Jorge.
Pues ahí estamos. Si Dios quiere, tendremos Madrid, calor y color.
Well, j'espère que ça passe muy bien. Je fais un mélange de les deux. No, but I hope really that it goes really well. I hope anyone who's interested will look up all the details, will get their way to Madrid. I've personally never been to Madrid, so I'm certainly going to have a look for myself and see if I can get there. And we really hope that you have thought that this podcast had some calor and color, and that you will tune in again for the next one. So with huge thanks to Jerry and Jorge for making the time to talk to us about the UIA today. Thank you both very much.
And to you,
Rachel. It was such a pleasure.
Gracias. Merci beaucoup.
De nada, de rien. Please do tune in next time. Thank you from all of us. Have a great week.